Wilkinson here. Today my guest is Gina Zollman. Where do we meet, Gina?
Where we met?
Well, wait, before we get into that, say hi to my people. I always get
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
Glad to have you. So where do we meet? Mark Hollenstein, right?
That's right.
Who is he?
Well, he's a guru of sorts. I met him through my voice teacher, Doug, and he's about to do this year-long deep dive into consciousness or breaking through patterns that you have in your life. And it was kind of airy-fairy, so to speak, but it seemed intriguing. And Doug was so adamant that it would change my life. And I thought, okay, I get it. I'll do it. And I just jumped in, and I met you through What's Important Now, WIN Mastermind. And it's really enlightened me. It's been a very interesting journey.
Tell my people a little bit about your general story, your history. Let's start there.
Well, I grew up in Orange County. I was the youngest of four, three older brothers in an Italian-American family. And my dad was a successful businessman, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. And I was there was the heir, the spare, and the double spare. I was the girl, and my job was to take care of my mom. I was never encouraged to get a job or think about having my own children. It was this kind of default assignment in the hierarchy of my family. So I was kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but an afterthought or so to speak. And I tried to assert myself. I went to a Catholic girls' high school, and I had always a little bit of an eating problem. I was a little overweight most of my childhood. So they held an intervention when I ate 2 boxfuls of these popsicles, 24 of these fudgesicles one day. It was a hot summer day in July. Here were my fat brothers and my fat father. My mother was normal, and one of my brothers was normal, telling me I needed to lose weight. I weighed 154. I was 5'7", hardly having an obese history. I had no obese history. I had a small eating problem. But this absolutely enraged me, and it was a seminal moment in my life that I said, I'm going to get revenge. These people don't get me. They don't love me for who I am. I was a straight-A student. I was a good kid. I was a good friend. I was a good daughter. And they were telling me I had to go on a diet at age 13 and lose this weight, which I was humiliated by. At any rate, if you see the course of my life, it's this one thing after another, trying to get revenge and trying to be somebody because I felt so insignificant in my family. And I went into show business after 2 different careers, and my weight had gotten heavier and heavier. Every time I went on the diet, I lost the weight and gained back more. And I would always lose weight to get into a relationship. And then in the relationship, I'd gain the weight back, and then the relationship would be over. This happened in both my marriages. I'm a talented singer and I'm a talented performer, and I knew that I had a shot at success doing that. But I didn't want to be known as a fat performer or someone the brunt of ridicule. So every time I would get some degree of notoriety at my weight, I would back off and say, I don't want to be known for being a fat entertainer. So I always went back to Jenny Craig or Nutrisystem or Weight Watchers or one of these things that never worked for me because that's all they had. That was all that was available. And I combined a trainer with Jenny Craig, or I would get these meals delivered with a trainer on the side, and I'd lose weight and gain back more.
So you were yo-yoing.
I was yo-yoing, for sure. I can say that my impetus as my raison d'etre as a performer was to help relieve suffering. I thought that if I could provide humor and good music and a moment, an hour or so in the dark, which is the name of one of my songs, an hour or so in the presence of an artist might be healing to people. And at one point, because it wasn't a real profitable experiment to be a cabaret singer, you pay for your rehearsals, you pay for your lighting guy, you pay for publicity, and you have to four-wall a room, meaning you bring your own audience. So it was to market to your people takes money, buying postcards, getting photographs done. So who was suffering here? I was sacrificing and suffering to put on a show to help people relieve their suffering. So it didn't make a lot of sense. On top of that, I was overweight. So who was suffering more? I needed to take a strong look at myself and say, Gina, you have to relieve your own suffering. And so that's when I really said, I have to approach this from a life-sustaining place, not a vain place, not a guilt place, but how do I get in charge of my obesity? How do I do that? At my top weight, I was 287, and I've lost over 120 pounds and kept it off for 24 years now. But what it finally occurred to me was diet and exercise alone don't work. And I got liposuction, which worked, and I was no longer bottom heavy. To be succinct about it, I had a very big hips. And then when that worked, I was open to the gastric bypass, which I did in 1997. And 2 years later, I had lost 130 pounds. And then 2 years after that of exercise and diet and maintaining the weight loss, because you still have to diet after you've lost the weight. If you don't watch your weight, just as if you're dieting, you'll gain it back. So there's no escape from that as far as I'm concerned. And the exercise I did not restore my body to a slender form. I had excess skin. I looked like an unmade bed, or I like to say a melted ice cream cone.
Wow.
And all I wanted to do was be normal. I wasn't going to be a swimsuit model, and I wasn't going to be on the cover of Life magazine. I just wanted to be normal. And so I borrowed money against my house and got 7 surgeries in 2 years. And then I started dating men with better jobs. Sounds funny, but it's true. I was much more confident, and I knew that as long as I watched what I ate and exercised, that I would keep the weight off.
And it worked.
It worked. I've maintained the weight loss now 24 years.
So talk about some of your business experience.
Like I said, I had this revenge scenario after I was forced to be put on a diet at age 13. And one of the things that happened was I graduated from college and I was engaged. And my husband at the time was younger than me. He hadn't graduated yet, my fiance. And so I went to the job board at college the month I graduated. And I said, well, I want to sell expensive things to rich people. That's what I want to do. Because I figured I had the personality and the background to do that. And I had a BA. So in linguistics and music, but still I had a BA. So there were 3 jobs that met my criterion, and I interviewed for 2 of them. One of them said, you're not what we're looking for, and he just hung up on me. But the other 2 I got appointments with, and I got 2 job offers. And I took the one, I talked to my dad, what would you take? And he said I'd take the stockbroker job. So that's what I did. I was trained on Wall Street in 1980. And 6 months later, I was on straight commission, making a living for myself and supporting my husband. But that lasted 5 years, and I had done what I set out to do, and I proved to my family that I could make it in the big bad world. And I went to work for my family thinking then I would show them again that I'm worthy of my last name and the legacy of my father's business and entrepreneurship. But I hated it. I hated working for my family. It was awful. Every day was horrible. It was in a warehouse in Commerce, and being part of the family business meant that when you walked into the lunchroom, everybody was quiet because there's the boss or the boss's daughter, and I was kind of persona non grata. Whereas before, as a stockbroker, as long as I was making the company money, I was top notch. I was everybody's friend. Everybody wanted to know me. Then I go into this other environment and I'm the enemy, which I didn't like. And then the stuff that I didn't enjoy. Shipping and receiving, hiring and firing people, going on the road to restaurant shows, going to restaurant kitchens. None of it really interested me. And you would think I would have known that going in, but I didn't. I really saw what my dad did as an executive, and it wasn't what I did. I was more of a hands-on manager, and it wasn't a good job for me. It wasn't a good job fit. And so I told my dad when he fired me,
Oh, he fired you.
he told me he was going to make me into an ice cream machine salesperson. I said, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to do that. I definitely did not want to sell ice cream machines.
Was he diversifying and actually going into that?
So he had that business. He had the filter business and the ice cream machine business. The ice cream machine business actually predated the filter business that he was in. Commercial filters that go over commercial frying areas was the company that I worked for, Flame Guard.
Wow.
Anyways, I'm sure somebody else might have flourished in that job, and it was just not for me. And he asked me what I wanted to do, my dad, and I said, I want to go into show business. And of course, I'd been in shows in grade school and high school and college, but I really didn't know how to make a living at that. So I thought I'll be a singer and do shows and make a living from ticket prices. Well, that's also something I didn't do a lot of research on, because it's really hard to make a living as a singer when you don't play an instrument for yourself. If you don't play piano or guitar, it's very hard to make a living as a singer, because you have to hire people to do that, people to do arrangements for you. But I did try, and I would say my highlight of my career as a singer the first time around, because I've tried it a couple of times and quit a couple of times. The highlight for the first foray was headlining at the Hollywood-Roosevelt Cinegrill. They have a 30-foot marquee on Hollywood Boulevard. And I did 3 different nights there, Saturday nights where I sold out and had standing ovations. And my dad actually got to see me do those shows. And when he died, the 3 weeks after he saw me do one of these great shows, he died in his sleep. My world was over. It was devastating when he died. And I played all the dates that I had set up. And then this was in 1994, I let my career go. I went back into sales, and maybe I did some karaoke, maybe I did a couple vocal competitions or workshops, but I didn't pursue it the way I had. The only thing I can say in my defense is that I had gotten to a level of expertise where the next step was for me to move to New York. And I wasn't prepared to move to New York. So being kind of an all or nothing thinker, I'm not going to New York, so I'm not doing cabaret. So that's what happened.
Now, where were you on your weight journey at this point when your father died?
Well, that's a good question, too. I had gone to Overeaters Anonymous and had some success, and I was probably 202 pounds at the time of my cabaret show at the Cinegrill, which is the time when my dad died. And by the time 6 months had gone by and they were going through his estate, we were at the offices in Commerce, and I weighed 175, which is the thinnest I'd been in decades. So that was me trying to fulfill my promise to my dad, which the day before he died, I said, Dad, I'll never give up trying to lose this weight. I'll never give up trying to make it as a singer. But I didn't realize what amount of wind he was beneath my wings. I mean, he put money into my career. He supported me by going to the shows. And
so he was in favor of you doing these?
He was the only one in the family that was in favor of it. But I'm sure he complained that I wasn't making money. And as a businessman, he thought, what is your business model here? Right. Where is the end of this supporting you? When do you start picking up the slack and earning? And like I said, I earned, but I didn't earn more than I spent to be there. It was definitely a losing financial proposition to be a singer for me.
When he died, were you working for him, or had you already moved on?
I had already moved on. I worked for him from 1984 to 86, and then I had my first one-woman show in 87, and then it peaked in 94 at the Cinegrill. But in 99, 2000, I put on some shows, and I started getting back into it. I played the gardenia on my 50th birthday, which would have been 2005. I did a major show there, and I had a major show in 2009 at Vitello's. It's called Sterling's Upstairs at Vitello's. But I did weddings, and I did showcases, and I did master classes, and I did acting workshops. I kept my big toe in it, but the overarching theme is I did not know how to make money as a singer, and I had a weight issue where I did not feel I was at my best physically. 97 is when I got the surgery, to the gastric bypass surgery. And then 2 years later, like I said, I reached my goal weight, and then another 2 years of exercise. I had the surgeries to correct the excess skin. And then I dated a lot and pretty much stayed out of the limelight because I was happier than I'd ever been. I had kind of slayed the dragon, so to speak. The things that I felt on stage, which was being noticed, being appreciated, being acknowledged as a fat person, but I was not invisible. In life, I was invisible as a fat person, or I was derided or made fun of. And as a thin person, I would get hit on at the bank, at the grocery store, at the gas station. People would stop and honk their horn if I was crossing the street. And even more bizarre things happened to me that were evidence that I was no longer a pariah. I was no longer the fat girl in the room. Right. And I think that fed me in a way that was similar to performing. And I did not have that desire to like get revenge or to show them, I'll show them. It kind of dissipated when I felt I had control over my weight. And like I said, I still dieted and exercised, but I was not yo-yo dieting. I was maintenance dieting. Right. I knew how many calories to eat. I knew how much to exercise to keep my weight steady. And I got into a major relationship in 2005, and I was there for 14 years, and I had never experienced a long-term relationship before then. But I can say one of my characters when I was heavy was the PMS poster woman, which I was. I had terrible PMS. And anybody who's lived with someone with PMS knows that it's a very volatile situation one time a month. And the volatility comes out of nowhere. You don't expect it and you don't understand it. But what happened for me specifically, and if this helps one person, it's worth me telling. When I had colon cancer, which I was diagnosed in 2005, December of 2005, they scheduled a colon resection so that the area with the polyp would be removed, the cancerous polyp. But the doctor said, Gina, you're 50. Do you want me to take out your ovaries? And I said, well, why would you do that? She said, well, you'll never get ovarian cancer if we do that, and you're a prime candidate for that. And I said, well, what else? She said, well, you'll get your menopause, and you won't have your period anymore. I go, that's what I want. Maybe that will help me. And sure enough, I was properly medicated after that for bipolar disorder, and I was actually a much happier person because I was more in balance, and I was able to have a 14-year relationship because I was normal. I had normal ups and downs, but not these radical mood swings.
Right.
And really episodes that were cause injury to my relationship, because somebody who is around you, this is something I learned in therapy, that oftentimes when you're in pain, you ascribe the source of that pain to whoever's around you. Instead of owning that it's your own pain, you blame someone for it. And that's what I did. Mm. And that's no fun to be around. If someone who's completely innocent is around you, gets blamed for your emotions. And that destroys relationships. So I was actually in a place in 2006 where I was going through chemotherapy and menopause at the same time, which I don't recommend. Wow. But I came out the other side and had a very healthy relationship for 14 years. And I am really grateful that I had that, when all is said and done.
And that ended when?
In 2019, right before the pandemic started. But I wrote a book about that. I wrote a book about being suddenly single at age 64. I called it I'm calling it The First Best Thing. It's being edited right now. And about what I did when that happened to me. And it was a shock to me when my relationship ended. I was not prepared for it.
So he ended it?
Well, like I said, I think I showed you that little blip in my video from the show, that when he told me that I could stay in the spare room because he was moving his girlfriend into the master bedroom, but I could stay in the spare room, when he told me that.
Okay, I didn't make that connection.
Right.
When I saw that, it was because it was. I mean, you kind of like flip through the whole thing. Okay,
Right.
now I get it. Okay.
Yeah. So when he said that I could stay, but his girlfriend was moving in, I said, "What? Are you out of your mind?"
Right.
And so I just flew to Idaho. We were not there. We lived in Idaho and Palm Springs. He was in Palm Springs, and so was I. But I flew to Idaho, and I called him and I said, "Checkmate. I'm here, and I'm taking all my things, and this is over." And I did, and I did a really smart thing. Another little tip: I packed my SUV with all my belongings, and I shipped my SUV to Palm Springs. Cost me $800. The smartest thing I ever did.
Huh.
I'm a really nice person. I left the house beautiful. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine, and I wished him well. But I'm not going to be the other woman or the second in line or the sister wife or whatever it was going to be.
Was he looking for a poly relationship or something?
He told me he was polyamorous. He said he came out as polyamorous, but I don't believe he's living that lifestyle now. But remember, this is someone who didn't abandon me when I had cancer. And when I had, in 2010, a medication problem where I was taking a prescribed drug that had terrible negative side effects and toxicity. I was hospitalized for 2 weeks. He came to my hospital room every day for those 2 weeks. And he didn't abandon me or make me wrong for having these terrible side effects. So when someone is there for you at these critical times, you don't just flush the relationship. At least I don't. I had a lot of compassion for him because there were things that I noticed now in retrospect that I was doing that my mother did in her relationship with my father, which was she led a separate life. And Jim and I were leading to a great degree, separate lives. And he wanted more. And I think I can see now that he hinted at, why don't you watch TV with me? I said, because you're watching an Israeli sitcom in Hebrew. I don't want to do that.
Right.
And there were things that I was never going to do with him. And now he's with a French woman who they watch French sitcoms in French. So they have that in common. But I mean, I didn't see my parents do anything together, and they were together for 50 years. So what was my role model there? I didn't think I had to watch Israeli sitcoms with him.
All right. So that was, okay, so when you split up with him was 2000 what?
2019.
Oh, 2019. Okay. So 05 is when you got into the relationship.
Right.
Okay, 19 you got out of it. So what changed after that?
Well, I took responsibility for what was going on. And once again, I looked at my own suffering and how I had contributed to it. And I got onto a dieting app, along with a couple of dating apps. And what I saw, the guys that I was interested in wanted a very active girlfriend, someone that hiked and golfed and played tennis. I thought, I like to do all those things. Why am I not doing those things? So I took golf lessons and tennis lessons. I got onto this dieting app called Noom, and I lost the 30 pounds I had gained during my 14-year relationship. And I looked and saw what have I always wanted to do? Like, what's a bucket list thing for me? And
Right.
I always wanted to camp. And I didn't grow up in a camping family per se. So I never went in an RV or had a tent. So when I saw this guy on a dating app that was his lifestyle, I thought, well, I kind of like to meet that guy. It was one of those sites where you can't meet someone unless they like you first. So we both liked each other, and we both had a chance to look at each other's profiles. And we talked for a couple weeks on the phone, and then I flew to meet him in Eureka. And we went on a little RV trip, and that's all she wrote. We love camping.
Well, what's his first name?
His name is Stephen.
What do you like about Stephen?
Well, Stephen is a master of the universe, and I say that with all sincerity and not in any kind of way sarcastically. He has to know everything about that RV in order to take it on the road, and he knows how to fix anything that goes wrong with it. He knows how to cook or barbecue or make a fire or park it, or we can be in a camp with electricity and water, we can be on the side of the road with what they call dry camping. And he knows how to handle any eventuality, and I've seen him do it. And that is very calming to me as a woman. I like when someone knows the answers to things. And I know the answers to a lot of things. I know how to cook. I can cook anything from scratch pretty much. But he can cook even better than I can.
Oh,
And
really?
what's happened is he's taken over the duties of cooking. And I never knew what it was like to be taken care of like that. I've told him repeatedly, I'll cook, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And he says, Gina, I don't like your cooking, which I think is very honest. I cook with a lot of oil and salt, and I like to have things have a lot of flavor. I know that doesn't sound negative, but when you're somebody who's like gone vegan like he has, oil is not your friend. So he tries to find flavors that are not oil-based. So he's made an art of making gourmet food vegan, or making vegan gourmet food. And I'm delighted by it because, remember, I count calories, I watch my weight every day, and I exercise. So he loves to exercise. We bike ride, we hike, we swim, we take walks. We love to go to thrift stores and garage sales and vintage shops. So wherever we are, we do these things. We swim, hike, bike, go to garage sales and thrift stores, and we live a modest life, mostly in this camper when I'm with him in northern Washington on the Canadian border, where he's building a house. But the house is so long in coming because the planning stage that we're at is we're just now bringing in water and electricity. We're just got the septic system done.
Okay.
And now we're grading the land, and we're making sure the trees nearby, the dead ones, are hauled away, or the branches that are iffy looking get cut so that they don't come down on top of the house.
Right.
So there's a lot of planning and organizing of the stages that you go through so that you don't get ahead of yourself. You do things in the order that they're meant to be done. So we'll probably have a house in like a year and 2 months because we're only going to be there until October. Then we go back to Palm Springs.
And that's up in the Northwest?
It's called, the town is called Point Roberts. It's at the 49th parallel. It's right below Vancouver, British Columbia. And the nearest American town is Blaine, but you've probably heard of Bellingham. It's close to
I know
Bellingham.
where Blaine is. I've been to Blaine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's something I have the opportunity to sing in Vancouver.
Well, I'm not done with you yet.
All
so
right.
Go back to Stephen, right?
Okay.
All right, you told me what he does, but what do you like about him? I'm putting you on the spot here. Throwing you in the deep end of the pool.
Steve is very intelligent. He is constantly learning. He's not somebody that drinks a 6-pack of beer and goes to sleep on the couch every night. Right. He's always doing YouTube videos about how to do what he's doing with the house by himself with his own 2 hands. Probably the area that he's going to need help in is roofing. He can't do that by himself. But he fully intends to build this house almost completely by himself.
Wow.
So I really admire that mastery, the self-mastery it takes, and the self-control it takes to budget and to plan and to know that you're the bottom line. I mean, he has an architect doing the plans, and he has to submit these plans, so they have to be done correctly. He can't just assume an architect's hat and do that. He has to hire someone to do that. But Steve is really funny, and as yang as I can be very yangy as a woman. He is more yang. He is a mountain man. He chops his own wood, and this is what he did to prepare the place for me to be there and to talk about what I love about him. He got a used antique soaking tub. He got a used potbelly stove, and he rigged it so that the water going into the soaking tub was heated and constantly being reheated. So you can take a soaking...
So circulating.
Right. And it built an outdoor shower. So we're on a private 5-acre forested plot of land about a quarter mile from a public street. Our road is private, and our neighbors are a good couple 100 feet away,
Right.
one on one side. So I come back to the camp spot after being away for a couple of months. Steve is there ahead of me because he's got to get the electricity and the water in before he wants me to come. And there's a bathtub that's been insulated that has got circulating water, and he's named it the Gina Maria, and he has a sign on it. And he's done this all for me because he knows how much I like to take a bath.
And it's out in the trees?
It's right in the forest.
Oh, that's very cool.
So I don't think late at night when I'm trying to get to sleep, does this guy love me? I know that he loves me, and I know that I love him. It's amazing when you meet somebody that you click with on so many different levels. He loves to learn. He loves to try new recipes. He likes to try ethnic restaurants. All those things I love to do.
As long as they're vegan.
Well, we're not strict vegans, but we're pretty vegan. I'll have occasionally a cheeseburger at In-N-Out, and so will he. But we don't.
He's not dogmatic about it.
He's not dogmatic. Yeah. Sorry.
All right, now let's switch over to your revived career here. Tell me about it.
Well, my mother died in 2018, and my mother, for that matter, most of my family never really approved of me singing because it wasn't a profitable endeavor, and they were very profit-oriented. And I can see their point of view, but as an artist, you can't judge yourself by, are you making money? I mean, there are people that do make money, but I'm here to tell you that to learn your craft, you have to go through a lot to be one of those people that gets paid a lot of money.
Right.
So after my mother died and I inherited a huge amount of money, I did a lot of things that I had wanted to do. I paid off my stepdaughter's college loans. I bought a house. I invested. And there was some money left over that really I didn't know what to do with. And I was very careful about not spending it. And I said, what do I really want to do? I bought a sports car. Turns out that wasn't it. I sold the sports car.
Yeah. What'd you buy?
I bought a 911 Carrera.
Wow.
Brand new. It was beautiful, but I never used it. I was too afraid to drive it. I sold it a year and a half later. It had 3,000 miles on it.
Whoa, that's the kind of car you want to buy used.
Yeah.
Well, not only driving it, but you're afraid to park it.
I was afraid to park it.
Yep.
But it was in mint condition when I sold it, so I got a good price on it.
That's good.
But I decided that wasn't it. But I said, what would my dad want for me? And remember, my dad is the one person in my family that believed in me, even though he was dismayed that I couldn't make money at it. My dad would say, go make a CD, Gina. And so I worked with my music director, Stephen Applegate, who I'd done a lot of shows with. And we went through my repertoire, things that I had done repeatedly and successfully on stage and songs that I really connected with. And we took the 40 songs that I had and we whittled it down to 14, and we recorded them at Capitol Records and at East West Studios. Both of those places Frank Sinatra recorded at. I used his microphone and in his studio. When we performed, when I recorded, at Capitol Records in Studio A, which is where Sinatra recorded. In Studio B was Johnny Mathis that day. And so we couldn't continue recording at Capitol because during the pandemic, they had made plans to close it down for earthquake retrofitting. And the noise that there was going to be in the construction would be detrimental to people trying to record.
Exactly.
So they had to close down the recording studios. So we went to East West. The first day I was at East West, Keanu Reeves came by and said hi because his band was recording there. So it was kind of good company, both times kind of a good omen. I had the best sidemen, as they say, you can possibly have. Jennifer Lydham was my bass player. She was in Doc Severinsen's band for The Tonight Show. She was Mel Torme's bass player. She was Peggy Lee's bass player.
Wow.
And the drummer, Dave Tall, was recorded and gigged all around town, a very famous guy. Marek Sipakowicz is my cellist, and he added such a wonderful layer of a romantic quality to a number of the songs. And Steve Rollins did most of my arrangements, jazz, especially the jazz arrangements, and he played piano on 8 of the tracks. And Stephen Applegate played on 4 of the tracks. So that's 12 tracks, 8 and 4, but the 2 songs didn't make it. One of them, we couldn't get the rights. It was a Rodgers and Hammerstein song that we wanted to do to a 12-bar blues shuffle. And they wouldn't okay the change in tempo. They wouldn't have changed. They didn't agree with the arrangement, and they vetoed it. So even though I have a recording of it, I can't put it out. I can do it live, and I do it in my show, but it's not on the CD. And the other song, I just didn't like how it turned out. So we're going to have to go into the studio and re-record a couple of the instruments.
Is 14 the magic number or what?
12 is pretty much what people do nowadays, but I could have put in the song that we got the rights to that I didn't like the arrangement of because my music director, Stephen Applegate, said, this is a great song. And I said, I just don't like it enough. I didn't want to do 13.
Right.
I wanted 12 or 14, but not 13. Well, what I'm shocked at, is that not only did I get excellent performance reviews of the show, but my CD reviews have been top-notch. I got into Music Connection magazine, which is trade magazine to across the country to musicians. And I got a review there by Jonathan Widron, who's a nationally known critic, jazz critic.
Uh-huh.
And I was also reviewed by Scott Yano of LA Jazz Scene, and he gave me a rave review. So it validates me on a level that just people coming and applauding for you or saying you have a great show they don't have to review you. They have plenty of people lining up to say, please review me.
Right.
So the fact that you're even reviewed is an honor. But on top of that, to get good reviews and then to be on the cover of the magazine. I'm self-produced. I don't have a record label. And to be selected, to be reviewed, and to be on the cover is a real honor. And all this does is allows me to publicize my publicity. In other words, I want to go sing in the casinos. I want to go sing in theaters that book acts like mine. Here's the reviews. Here's the video of the show. You have every reason to see that I'm going to be an appealing act for your audience, because I don't have an audience following in Vancouver. I don't have an audience following in Palm Springs large enough to book myself. And I could make more. If I could get 2,500 people that I knew into a room, I could make a killing. But right now, I don't have that kind of following. I have to be booked in venues that already have a following.
Well, we're at the point where I asked the question. Okay. So, Gina, looking back at your life, what have you learned that you'd like to pass on to my listeners? What are a couple important things that you've learned?
Well, if you're always trying to help other people, make sure you're helping yourself first, because you can deficit spend your goodwill and have nothing left for yourself. And people will respect you if you take care of yourself first. Don't think they won't, because if they want you at your own expense, they're not real friends. I was suffering when I was overweight, and it was a bleak place, and I experienced joy on stage, and I loved the thought I was lifting people up or offering them an escape. But in my real life, I was miserable. And that's not a good equation to be living, to be on stage, and most of your life you're miserable.
Right.
So how I got out of it is I said, Gina, you have to relieve your own suffering. You have to relieve your own suffering. It makes you more able to help people, not less. So if there's something that you're ignoring about yourself, maybe you have a recurring pain, you have to pay attention to these things. If something hurts you longer than 3 weeks, go get it checked out. I had problems related to my colon cancer that had I paid attention, I probably wouldn't have had to have surgery. They could have caught what was wrong with me when I started having symptoms, which is when I was 45, but I didn't pay attention till I was 50. And let me tell you, everybody talks about chemotherapy. It's the last thing you want to do. It's a horrible thing. It's barbaric. Anything you can do to avoid it, do that. So if you haven't had a colonoscopy, get one. It's not that big of a deal. And I would have had one at 45. They say 50, I say 45.
So take care of yourself.
Right. Take care of yourself.
Good words. Thanks for coming in.
It's been a
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
It's great. Thanks, Gina.
Thank you.